Hi, Sandy.
Hi there. Thank you
How
so
are
much.
you?
I'm well. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. I'm just cold. It's winter months here in South Africa.
I know that's harsh. We have beach plans this weekend.
Is it? Yeah. But it's not everywhere in South Africa. And I'm just thinking about it now that since we've started winter here in South Africa, each and every single show that I've had, each and every single day, that's just how the conversation starts. When somebody asks me, how am I? I'm like, okay,
Cold.
but it's cold. And the reason I mention that is because I do not like the cold. And this is not me complaining. I'm just saying I'm a summer baby.
Well, Kino, when you decide someday that you want to retire, I live on a little island called Jekyll Island, Georgia. Yeah, you laugh, but right off the coast of Georgia. And we have summertime about 10 months of the year. Not super hot, but summers are hot. But 10 months a year, we've got good weather. And then we get like a cold snap December, January. It's not too bad, though. So, you consider it. You're welcome to come check it out.
Thank you for the invite. Thank you. That sounds like paradise to me.
Pretty neat.
I never know. So there's an island just off Georgia.
There's a lot of coastal islands in the United States along the edges. And in Georgia, there are a group of islands that they call the Golden Isles. And that's why my book series is called The Gem of the Golden Isles, because Jekyll is the smallest of the islands. And Jekyll Island is known as the Gem of the Golden Isles. But they're tiny. Our island is 1 mile by 7 miles. And we have less than 1,000 residents. We have about 600 houses total. But we're technically a state park, so they can't build here anymore. And we have turtles. We have tons of turtle nests, and we have alligators. And they don't bite anything, though. They know that these are tourists, and that would be bad for promoting the island. So the alligators behave. But it's really amazing. And the next door is St. Simon's Island, which is a little bigger and also beautiful, but lots of traffic. And the super pishy posh Sea Island off the coast is off there. And it's another little one. That's where Jeffrey Epstein used to come hang out.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, so his airplane, the famous one, the Lolita Express?
Right.
It lives at our airport in Brunswick. Or on Jekyll. Yeah, because I guess the last time he flew it, he had all his repair work done in Brunswick Air. And that's where he would have his airplane maintained. And that's where it got left. I think the engines have been taken off it and sold, but the actual fuselage is there. It was great. The newspapers a couple months ago, when they released all that stuff, Jekyll Island or this area of Georgia, what do we care about Epstein? But people knew he had vacationed at Sea Island. One of the newspapers printed a list of his credit card charges in the area. It was hysterical. We're like, oh, he likes fused frozen yogurt. He's a Southern Soul barbecue guy. Like, we can see where Jeffrey Epstein hung out. Like, I wouldn't research it myself, but I'll read the article.
And they are not saying what they are going to do with the whole entire plane. It's just there.
No idea. I don't know. Like, I think it's just sitting there rotten. But this area is really neat. The Federal Law Enforcement Training Center is here. And that's where you hear about the United States, you hear about the FBI, and there's all these TV shows about Quantico. And that's where the FBI trains. But all of our other federal agents, I shouldn't say all, there's a couple exceptions, but almost everybody comes down here to train and go into law enforcement. So my husband is a retired cop from DC. He was a SWAT commander before he retired. So we're just a bunch of retired cops living on an island.
Thank you so much for USA Islands 101. You know what is probably going to happen to that plane? It's probably going to remain there for a good couple of years, and then it's going to go on auction, to the highest bidder, and it's going to sell for a couple millions as someone's trophy. That's what's up.
Or you could mount it on a trailer and turn it into an airplane party bus. Just an idea. Just in this warped world we live in, there are people who would come from very far to have dinner on the Lolita Express.
Yeah,
It's- but-
I don't disagree. I don't. That is another option.
On the better on that.
Yeah. Well, this is interesting to know. I mean, of course, you're familiar with all when you're not based in the US, all the famous islands, that are close by. But it's interesting to know, that the smaller islands, just off the coast. That's quite cool.
We have
And you got good
really
Wi-Fi.
pretty islands. I do. I have good Wi-Fi, and and it's kind of funny because my husband and we have 6 grandchildren that are teenagers, and so the one thing we had to do was make sure we have a guest house out back, and it's really cool. It came with the house, and you love your grandchildren even more when they stay out back. But it's really neat. We've got the big Wi-Fi boosters because the kids will do anything as long as there's Wi-Fi.
Yeah, that's true. I guess that's the case anyway in the world today.
But I'll tell you, I would never complain about the signal strength because I lived on Vieques Island, Puerto Rico for 11 years. And that is 7 miles off the coast of Puerto Rico. And my God, we couldn't even have Wi-Fi until like my 3rd or 4th year there. And all of our Wi-Fi was rigged off of a satellite, like DirecTV, etc. There was no actual cable. There was no, because you're on little islands in the Caribbean. So I appreciate a good Wi-Fi signal now. Also, I appreciate not being in a place that when I get interviewed on a podcast, they have to cut out the chickens and the cookie frogs in the background.
Oh my word. Well, Sandy, thank you. Thank you for starting the show with so much vibrant energy. Much appreciated it. So, I'm here thinking to myself, you're telling me that, you got 6 grandchildren. I'm like, you don't look the part. You don't talk the part.
It's really funny because I've been doing all these book events, right? And book signings.
Yeah.
And okay, I read romance novels when I was younger. And then I don't know, as you start to actually recognize the Fabio types on the covers of the books, my husband calls that softcore porn for housewives. So when I started writing, I have 6 grandchildren. They're all teenage. The oldest is 21. He just turned 21 last week. 5 of them are boys. I'm not writing about sex. I'm not. There will be no sex in my books. There can be like allusions to it, like, ooh, she said, I'm going to shower. And he followed her. I mean, but it goes dark.
Yeah.
I don't want to look at a 19-year-old grandson across the table on a cruise or at Thanksgiving and just, no, I cannot. No, I can't. And also, like, I can write sex scenes, but it makes me uncomfortable. I mean, I've been married forever, so that's kind of sad, but who's looking over my shoulder? And then I couldn't put that out with my name on it. I mean, I'm not picking on the people who do. I'm glad they can write it. I can buy their softcore porn for housewives, but I cannot write it.
I am going to quote the author from last week. Sex is not my jam when it comes to writing.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Sandy, before we get to your artistic career, before we get to your series, let's go back a couple years. Actually, let's go back more than a couple years. So, wedding planner, Caribbean, 11 years. Let's get to know you. Before you became a wedding planner, what was life like for Sandy that led up to becoming a wedding planner?
Or a nurse or a lawyer or something, a job I could go back to later if I...
Yeah, that's what all mothers want, right?
Right. I wanted to be a writer. And I found ways to write. And by the time I was applying to college, I was editor of my school paper. I'd won, awards for newspaper writing. And my mother would throw out the college catalogs that were from journalism schools. She was sneaky. And we hit a compromise. I was going to major in journalism, and she was going to spend 4 years expecting me to, and I quote, end up writing obituaries on the overnight shift somewhere in the Midwest. That's a quote. I went to college. I did great. And I was campus editor of the Ohio State paper before I graduated. I had been the police beat. I was the editor, or the reporter of the police beat. It was great. I went to Ohio State. I got to report on like streakers on the football field every weekend. It was a hoot and a half. But when it was time to graduate, I wasn't sure what to do. And I had a wonderful professor who said, there's a program called the Institute on Political Journalism that is run by the Fund for American Studies. It's at Georgetown University. I think you should apply. And I didn't have the grades for it because class was an inconvenience I attended in between the newspaper and my social activities. And I got waitlisted. I did apply. I got waitlisted. And then I asked them what I could send them if I wanted to try and get in. They said, well, if you write anything else, send us your news clips. I was writing 20 column inches a day. And later on, they would joke with me that they gave me a full scholarship just to make me stop faxing them. So I went off to Georgetown. I started 2 days after I graduated. And it was this fantastic program that gave me an internship at Campaigns and Elections magazine while I was doing the class program. Before the end of that program, I'd been hired as associate editor. And then, my God, the August of 1990, this is so bad. Have a laugh at Americans, okay? In 1996, if you turned on the Democratic National Convention, because before our presidential elections, we have these two big national conventions, Democrats and Republicans, right? In 1996, if you were listening to the talking heads and the experts in Chicago at the Democratic National Convention, I was one of them. And I was 23 and I'd been out of college for 2.5 months.
Wow.
And they wanted my opinion. That's hysterical. Anyway, that's why I say don't listen. Don't waste. I mean, want to watch the convention? Watch the convention. Do you need to listen to the talking heads? So much. We don't know what we're talking about. Anyway, I loved Campaigns and Elections. I rose to managing editor there. And at the time, it was the only political trade publication of its kind. It was later sold to Congressional Quarterly. But I left there when I received an offer to write at the Wall Street Journal. I was 24. I was one of the youngest columnists there at the time. I moved to New York and I got to write the politics.net column. And people are like, what is politics.net? I go, that is what the Wall Street Journal does before they had a technology page. We didn't have a tech page yet. Like, you know, the Wall Street Journal has like distinctive look, right? And marketplace section is big section. And the first article on the far left is called the A-head. And a lot of times I was the A-head, which is a key place to be. And politics.net column, they just didn't know where to put it. Because again, they had just gone online at that point. I think may have been the first publication to actually charge for a subscription online. And so anyway, I was at the Wall Street Journal. It was amazing and an incredible experience. And I absolutely hated living in Manhattan. New York City is awful. Awful, awful. As my husband would say, I didn't forget anything there, so I do not have to go back. I mean, we have to go up for work and for fun every once in a while, you know, friends and stuff, but I'm just not a fan. And I tried living in New York, and I am a more social creature than that. Nobody says hello to each other on the sidewalk in New York. They all walk reading their newspapers and now their phones, but you couldn't read your phone when I was there. Anyway.
All about the hustle.
Pardon?
It's all about the hustle.
Yeah, and it's also, there's no sun. And I know this because I lost my sunglasses on move-in weekend. And I wasn't aware that I'd lost my sunglasses till I went to the beach 6 months later. You never have any sun in New York, except exactly at 12 noon if there's not a cloud over the block you're on. Because the buildings are tall and it's, I mean, people, I go to Central Park. That's fabulous. You clearly never lived anywhere with a real outside. Okay, that's fine. You enjoy Central Park. You stay in New York. But I am not a fan. So I was up there a couple of years. And Wall Street Journal at the time had a policy that if you wanted to write for the politics desk in D.C., it was a minimum of 2 years in New York and probably longer. And I wanted to go home. I was from D.C. I'd grown up in D.C. I did not love New York. I loved my job. I mean, I got to write for the Wall Street Journal. It was incredible. And I had some great friends up there, and I made good money. But New York is so expensive that at the end of the week, I was counting out whether I had enough money for. I was out when I lived in New York, I was out of money every week. I'd sit in the beginning of the week and count out how much I needed for subway fare. And if you went to work before sunrise or you left after dark, the Wall Street Journal was owned by Dow Jones back then. We got free car service if we went at night. So I can't tell you about, I'm sure everybody in my age group that was working on Wall Street that had that option, we traveled in dark. We worked a lot of hours, so we didn't have to take subways halfway across the world. But I was broke all the time. I was exhausted all the time. People weren't friendly. And I grew up in DC. I did the club scene. By my late 20s, I did not want to stand in line to get into anything. I was like, are you kidding? We did this when we were 17. So I got an offer from a PR firm in Washington to come work on a couple of big clients. And at the time, they were doing the publicity work for Steve Forbes' presidential campaign. And it was like switching to the dark side, going to public relations and government affairs. But it was so good for me because I still got to write. You write for clients all the time. When you read The Economist or the Wall Street Journal and you see an opinion column by the CEO of some famous company, they didn't write it. Somebody like me wrote it in an office, and then they put their name on it. So I still got to write. I just didn't get the byline. And I loved being back home in DC. And a lot of what I did kind of tied into event planning because there's, the way that you make things happen. And I was with firms for a number of years. And one of my biggest clients was the government of Puerto Rico. And at the time, the governor of Puerto Rico was a Republican. And it's relevant because they switch governors usually every 4 years. Every time they do it, they fire all their consultants in Washington, D.C. And they hire the other team. And just about 4 years into it, when all your initiatives are starting to work, the other governor switches. And they'll fire the PR team and they start over again. So when it stopped being a client, it was really neat. The government of Puerto Rico hired me to kick the U.S. Navy off of Vieques Island. Vieques Island is a little bitty island off the coast of Puerto Rico where the U.S. Navy used to practice bombing. Actually, the U.S. military, all branches, used to use this island because it was the only place in the United States where the air, land, and sea factions can come practice blowing things up together. And if you look at a lot of movies that are war movies that were filmed in the 80s and early 90s, maybe even earlier, when you're seeing those boats go ashore and you're watching war movies before CGI was a thing, usually they're B-roll that was filmed in Vieques because the Navy used to let the movie companies come out and film the practice, the military, to use the footage in movies. Kind of cool. And they filmed a lot of movies there. There's one with Clint Eastwood called Heartbreak Ridge that was filmed on Vieques about the U.S. had some medical students who were trapped in Grenada and we had to do a military extract, 25 years ago. And that was actually filmed on Vieques, which is cool because that's actually where the military launched from to go to Grenada. But it's really cool when you live on Vieques and you're watching the movie. And Clint Eastwood is like, look at the hostels. And you look at what they show you through the lens. And you're like, dude, those are locals waiting in the ferry line. That's the ferry line. Anyway, we had a gorgeous historic lighthouse that needed a massive renovation. So the island let them pretty much blow it up as long as they'd restore it for the movie. So it ended up being good for the island. But anyway, I fell in love with this little island. And the U.S. Navy accidentally blew up a civilian security guard. And so Puerto Rico wanted the Navy to stop bombing this occupied island. They used to bomb at sister island, Culebra, too. But President Nixon issued an executive order in the 70s to stop that. We don't know why not Vieques. So when we were already consultants, when we were tasked with figuring out what to do about Vieques, the governor said, I want fuera las marinas. I want the Navy out. Get the Navy off Vieques Island. The big military base in Puerto Rico can stay, but no more bombing Vieques Island. The problem was that big military base in Puerto Rico got as big as it did because it was supporting a live bombing range on Vieques. So when you get rid of the live bombing range, the U.S. Navy pretty much flipped the bird at Puerto Rico and shut an entire base down and put tens of thousands of people out of work. But before that, we had to kick the Navy off Vieques. And it was real interesting because the memo of understanding between the U.S. government and Puerto Rico said, we'll practice bombing 4 times a year. And they're 6-week cycles, 2 weeks to bring everybody in, 2 weeks to practice, 2 weeks to clean up and leave, right? When that man was killed, when the security guard was killed, he was struck by an Italian pilot on his Virgin bombing run. And a little bit of research I openly found on the .mil and defense websites. They were advertising to come bomb Vieques to foreign nations. They were renting out the island for gazillions of dollars and giving Puerto Rico and Vieques nothing for it. And they'd been doing it for a while. So we busted them. And at the end of the day, it was a long, hard fight. The U.S. Navy was ousted from Vieques Island and it was returned to Puerto Rico. They did pull out of Roosevelt Roads base. But my husband and I always laughed because Puerto Rico didn't really do anything with the base. They used the airport, but they didn't do what they could have done when they got this big working base, right? So it's kind of all the buildings have gone to yuck because everybody was gone by 2003. And sure as heck, President Trump reopened that base. That's where they're running all the operations. Remember all the Venezuelan drug boats they were catching? And the U.S. military, I don't know if you followed that. The U.S. military went down to the Caribbean to stop the drug thing, I think out of Venezuela. And anyway, that's where and my husband and I always said they're going to reopen that base because Puerto Rico never did anything with it. It's a base. It's still sitting there. So, anyway, I fell in love.
Exactly.
So I fell in love with this beautiful little island. And I took my husband there, and we weren't married at the time. And he says that he's afraid that if he hadn't loved it, I wouldn't have married him. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. So he fell in love with it. My mom fell in love with it. We bought a vacation home there. We kept going back. And my husband was a police captain. He was a SWAT commander with Metro Transit in D.C. And so he was pretty intense, but he enjoyed taking time off and going to Puerto Rico. And when he was eligible to retire, he had 30 years on the department. He hadn't shot anybody, and he hadn't been shot. And in the U.S., that's rare. So he managed to have a really successful and amazing law enforcement career. He's decorated and everything else. And he was ready to retire with 30 years in. And I said, yes, retire before something happens. Shootings are a lot of paperwork. And I said to him, I think, what do you want to do? And he said, what do you think about going to Puerto Rico? And I said, I'm not old enough to retire. He's older. And we got talking, and we had planned our own wedding on Vieques. There were no wedding planners there. And it was a holy friggin' nightmare because the list of things that went wrong. But people don't know they went wrong because we knew what was supposed to happen. If you don't tell people what goes wrong, your guests don't get upset. Like, I don't know, for an example, say a salad is served that isn't what the bride wanted, right? Well, if everybody else is happily eating dinner and nobody knows there weren't supposed to be, I don't know, cranberries in the salad, right? You can absolutely go back to the caterer after a wedding and be like, little refund here if you thought it was bad or you're upset. But you do not want to tell your guests that they screwed something up because that makes everybody start to criticize the food, and the food they might have really been enjoying, they suddenly don't like it. If they don't know something went wrong, don't tell them. So nobody knew that my wedding bouquet was the wrong color. I mean, my maid of honor did. She handed it to me. It was all white. It wasn't supposed to have any white in it. And I said, oh my God, that's not my bouquet. And she smacked me on the butt with it and said, now it is, and handed it to me. And yeah. And then they were supposed to have dessert before wedding cake, and they just forgot to serve it. And if I'd made a big deal about it, it would have been a stop the world, get this, whatever. We do not need to stop the world for 65 coconut creme brulees to be produced. We have cake waiting, right? But I got my money back the next day. And what brides get so emotional. It's really like a freaking nightmare because you just, anyway, everything went wrong at my wedding, but my guests had fun. My husband and I, we had fun. We got married, but we didn't really enjoy ourselves because we were stuffing and delivering welcome bags to every hotel room our guests were in. We had shipped half of the United States to Puerto Rico because Amazon didn't deliver Prime there then. We had done so much work, and we worked so hard that it wasn't really fun, to be honest. And so years later, we had a big reception back in DC. That was a little less stressful. But when it came down to what do we want to do when he retires, we were like, I'd kind of like to do weddings. I've done more up here. I'm not worried about planning them. This is easy. This is cake compared to DC. But there's a lot of resources aren't available. Like, there's no lighting company on Vieques Island. There's no linen company. So there's a rental company, but reliable would not be an appropriate word. And something's not their fault. I one time got a phone call on a Thursday night that the round tables that I had ordered for Saturday's wedding were not going to be available because they'd taken them to Culebra Island for another wedding and the ferry was down. And they weren't going to get them back for Saturday. Okay, well, that doesn't work when you have a bride who spent $100,000 and like 10 hours figuring out her place card chart. That won't work. 2 days before the wedding to be like, oh, you got to redo your place cards. It'll be long tables, not circles. That is enough for some brides to just put them on the ledge. So when this sort of thing happens, we would say, screw it. We're buying this stuff. In this case, my husband and she wasn't really an assistant. She kind of did everything. This amazing chick from the island, one of my best friends. She and Bill flew over to the Big Island. They rented a box truck. They drove the length of Puerto Rico to the Costco where we had found 6 12-person tables. They loaded them into the box truck. They drove them back about 3 hours to the port. And then you had to go to Nales, is our hardware store on Vieques. They also have one in Puerto Rico. They had to take it to Nales where the tables were taken out of the truck and put in the back of a dump truck and shrink wrapped. And then the dump truck took the ferry. And then the ferry delivered them to the Nales hardware store on Vieques Island. And I don't know, 6 hours before the wedding, they pulled them down off the, wherever they'd come in. And we were picking up tables to have at a wedding. We ended up buying more and more things and becoming sort of a rental company. We never rented to anybody that wasn't a client. But we didn't have choices. I had a florist who sucked. And I'm just going to say it. And he's dead now, so maybe you're not supposed to say that. But he did suck. Because my wedding bouquet was supposed to be all bright colors. It was literally, I torn off the cover of Martha Stewart and given it to him. And then like, that's my bouquet. And as far as my bridesmaids, I wanted them to have smaller versions of mine. And I didn't want any white in them. And I didn't want any birds of paradise. It's a tropical flower. And I just don't like the way it looks in bouquets. That's me. If you're doing a side-held bouquet versus a front-held, it works. I don't like that. All right. First off, my bouquet was all white. And my bridesmaids all had side-held bouquets that had freaking birds of paradise in them. I honestly wondered if he had read his own notes backwards. But again, you're just going to roll with the wedding. And because I've planned events for years in DC, I'm not going to tell anybody this isn't the bouquet I ordered. Nobody knew that. Nobody cared. I was annoyed. I was annoyed because I had spent $500 to have my live bouquet overnight shipped to a place that was going to be preserved. And they were putting it in a frame, all boxed out. All white. Anyway, I let that go. I didn't get upset. But when I was planning for brides, I'm sorry. The day we left the island for a honeymoon, a lot of us were in the Vieques. We were leaving on our honeymoon. And we were all in the airport. And I was leaving on honeymoon. Friends were going home. And I'm looking around. And a couple of my bridesmaids are holding their bouquets. They're taking with them. But I see more bouquets than that. I realized, do a little research. There were 3 weddings on the island that weekend. And he made 3 identical bridal bouquets. And every bridesmaid on the island had the same flowers. Now, it did not hurt my wedding because I didn't let it derail me. But when I got to the island, he was the only florist on the island. I became a wedding planner. I was very detailed. And I hated his flowers from the very first moment. I really liked him. But he was every arrangement he did said to me 1980s. I'm sorry, but that's my opinion. He was big into the long flowy ribbons. And it was just bleh. But it's like the brides wouldn't ask for that. They wanted a tight wrap with, pearl buttons down the back like a tuxedo wrap bouquet. And they'd all come with all these flowy. So I had a bride who wanted a Gerber daisy bouquet. It was on the cover of Martha Stewart's wedding magazine, right? And it was also the same year that Martha Stewart introduced her linen line at Kmart stores. Do you guys have Kmart?
No.
Okay, well, you hear people joke about Walmart, right?
Yeah.
Kmart wasn't as fancy as Walmart. Okay? And Walmart's not fancy. Kmart was sort of like Walmart plus dirtier. But she signed Martha Stewart. She is like the queen of weddings. She signs a deal with Kmart for a linen and like a home brand. And so I said, I have all these brides that want Gerber daisies. He said, I don't do Gerber daisies. I said, you have to do Gerber daisies. You're not the bride. You're my florist. They want Gerber daisies. And he said, they just had Gerber daisies on the front of the Martha Stewart thing, right? And Kmart was advertising their partnership with Martha Stewart. And the florist said, I will not make Gerber daisies for your Kmart brides. And so I did. I thought, how hard could it be to make a bouquet? When you're learning on YouTube at 3 a.m. and you don't have the tools, by the way, it can be complicated. But I'd say 3 months later, we were moving into space and we had opened flowers in Vieques. Initially, we were only serving our clients. And then eventually we started doing a lot of weddings that weren't ours. But I opened a flower shop because if the florist sucks and it's the only florist in the entire island, what do? You do it yourself. When we kept getting wrinkled, nasty tablecloths from I like the people who ran the rental company, but island time is not just an expression. It is a way of life. So if I needed things there, absolutely no later than noon, I had to have them scheduled for delivery by 10 a.m. And then they would get there by noon, maybe. So as we started acquiring things and we had to ask for less rentals and things, that made life easier, but it also made my husband, he never got to retire. My husband ran all my setup and teardown crews and everything else. And then the wedding business, we said 2 weddings a month would be perfect, right? We still want to go to the beach. We live in the islands. We had 19 weddings our first August. And by the way, the 1 month you really don't want to be planning weddings in the Caribbean. I mean, you want to talk about hot. My husband would call them three t-shirt days. 3 times a day he would shower because it was that gross. Well, there's no air conditioning anywhere but like in your bedrooms. You know, everything is outside. There's ventana louvered windows and ceiling fans in all the restaurants that are even indoor. There's no air conditioning in those things. So your whole body changes over time. But we did 19 weddings. It took off. It was crazy. And we ended up planning more than 500 weddings on this tiny island in the Caribbean. And it's a 5-mile by 21-mile island. So a lot bigger than where I am now. But 2/3 of Vieques Island had been military base and it became fish and wildlife area. It's the largest fish and wildlife area refuge in the United States now. It's a really incredible one. But so different islands for me. And I had to open a flower shop. We ended up owning the damn linens. We had to add a washer and dryer to our office to deal with the napkins and tablecloths every week. It was an intern job. I mean, it was insane because nobody had anything. You couldn't call and order things. You had to just do it. Do it yourself. If you didn't do it yourself, you would stress until it arrived, and then you still might stress if it looked like crap when it got there. So we did it all, and we loved going home and telling stories. And we had a friend who said, you know, I make TV and you guys are hilarious. And I would desperately love to make you, I would love to do a demo. I think you would be a really good reality show. And like, I think my life's funny, but I mean, I think I'm hilarious. Not everybody does. But weddings, I mean, these people are nuts. And it's kind of like, you know how body cams are so much fun? Because now you get to see what complete jerks people actually act like to the cops.
Yeah.
And, you know, for years, people are like, oh, that cop was rude to me, right?
Yeah.
Cops might not have liked body cams while they were learning how to turn them off when they went to the bathroom, but they love their body cams now because no one in the world could believe how horrible humans behave when they're drunk. And now we all get to watch it on television. So I would tell these stories about our crazy, and my friend's husband said, send me, when you get back to the island, send me a list of your weddings in the next year with just 2 bullet points. I just disappeared off your screen again. I'm back. So sorry, I'm picking up because it.
Yeah, you're back. You're back.
All right. So he said, my friend's husband said, when you get back to the island, send me a list of your upcoming weddings and put a couple bullet points as to this bride's a witch, it's a gay wedding. It's this, whatever. Just tell me what it is, right? And I sent it to him, and he had said to me, when I do this, it will be done on spec, meaning somebody didn't say, go shoot a demo of the show. His company is choosing to shoot the demo, and then they'll shop it, right? He said, it's going to take 6 or so months before my boss will pick up the tab for me to fly down there and do this demo. So I'll call you sometime, but send me the list. I sent him the list. He called or emailed me, and I was on the phone with him an hour later. He already had plane tickets. He said, did I read correctly that next Saturday, June 9th, you have a Russian bride on the north side of the island? At the exact same time, you have gay military police in uniform on the south side of the island? I said, yes. He's like, we're coming. Nothing went terribly wrong with those weddings. I mean, learning to film the first time was awful, but I kept telling production, you don't have to ever stage anything crazy to happen. It will happen. You can't stop it from happening. Whether the bride has a meltdown or a wedding guest has something dramatic happen, or the caterer couldn't get in a particular kind of beer, cheese, dessert, whatever, right? There will be drama. You do not need to add it. In this case, the night before her wedding, Ksenia, who I adore, still one of my favorite brides, she is married to somebody else now, living her best life, and we're still friends. Ksenia, gorgeous, gorgeous blonde girl. And her parents are from Russia. And it was just, the whole thing was really interesting. I got a panic phone call from her on her wedding morning. Panicked. Good sense of humor, panicked. It seems she had her hair done the day before they left for her wedding. She was a platinum blonde with hair to lower back. They went in the swimming pool the night before her wedding, and she didn't put her hair up. And from here to here, like mid-back, it turned mermaid green. Green. Like, not one of those blondes who might swim a lot in a pool because, gosh, she has kind of green hair, right? Green. And I was such a good girl. I said to her, okay, I know who to call. Sit tight. Maybe make yourself a breakfast cocktail. Be there in a minute. And then I called the producer who was there to shoot the demo. And I woken him up. She called me really early. She woke up, saw she had green hair, and did the right thing, right? Called production. He's like, I thought we weren't starting until 9. I'm like, so the bride has green hair. I'm going to go over there with a hairdresser. I just thought you might want to film it. Anyway, after he finished filming the demo, when they left the island, like June 10th, 11th, he said, and this was in 2012, he said, yeah, it's going to take 6 months before I have the time to edit it into a demo. Just don't call me. Yeah, I don't know if you thought maybe I'd be calling every week being like, what's going on? But I was too busy. Like, this was something that was just kind of happening separately, right?
Yeah.
And 6 weeks later, he calls me and he's like, all right, well, I kind of went ahead and made it, and we have 3 network offers on it. I was like, we started filming in November of 2012, and we only filmed that demo in June. The show aired in June. The first episode of the show aired 12 months after they came to film a demo. Wow, that was fast. And we had 66 days of filming, 18 hours a day. And I learned very quickly that people who are on reality television with their businesses, you can't actually do your job. It cannot be done because they don't want to film anything or they don't want you to do well during their camera time. When they have crews on, in my case, 18 hours a day, I wasn't supposed to talk to anybody who wouldn't be on camera. All right, so I've got 60 brides booked 2 years out, and a lot of them are never going to be on camera. And the way my business worked, I charge 50% of my fee up front and 50% 30 days prior to your wedding date, right? I couldn't book new clients because I wasn't allowed to talk to new clients unless they agreed to be filmed. What potential bride who hasn't figured out where their destination wedding is yet is going to tell America her wedding budget. Horrible.
Mhm.
So I didn't pick up any new clients during that because I couldn't talk to them. I did not sleep at all in the first month of filming. I had to go to Discovery Channel and have them do something with TLC because I had to do some work. I had clients whose weddings were going to be happening the day after the camera crew left the island. I couldn't not work. I was working in those 8 hours that I was supposed to be sleeping. It was tough. And the TV show aired and it was hilarious. I didn't think it was funny at the time. Now looking back, it's hysterical. They were filming me in the Caribbean outside in the sun. I am sweaty. My makeup sweat off every day. I don't wear makeup down there. It just rolls off your face. I did not look like one of those Real Housewives on camera. Nobody checked my makeup. I think it was reality star abuse. Anyway, I was so sweaty and so disgusting looking. And all I can do is laugh at it now because I really don't care. I did a great job. The brides were happy. But you don't have to add drama because it just happens, right? Like one of the worst, most awful, hideous brides in the entire world. To cap it all off, they left a backpack on the other ferry dock with their wedding rings and her engagement ring in it. And I found it. So, and that wasn't made up. We didn't make that shot. The only thing I can think of that, we had to order in an ice sculpture. Well, the production said, what if nothing goes wrong? It's a Mother's Day wedding. It's going to be boring. And why don't you have the mother of the bride request an ice sculpture? The mother of the bride developed a bleeding ulcer and had to be medevaced to the Big Island twice and kept signing out against medical advice and coming back. We did not need an ice sculpture. We had 2 medevacs. I stole the governor's helicopter. He had flown over to do a meeting with our mayor. And I was trying to get this woman onto an airplane to the Big Island to the hospital because we had like a dock in the box kind of thing, almost like an urgent care, but not nearly as good. My vet back in DC has more equipment than the hospital in Vieques did, and no, it's true. And so we got to get her off the island. We had all the drama. They only showed one of the medevacs because they had to include the ice sculpture since the network paid for it. My network contract was with Discovery, not with 495 Productions, who is the production company. This production company came from filming the last episode of Jersey Shore. They came to my island and became my crew. We had 8 people on our team, and not all of them were full-time. And I had 70 people in my parking lot. And we had Sandy Cam all the time and 2 other camera crews all the time. And we did all these things. And it was like the craziest thing in the world. But they thought they would come down and kind of push me around like the drunk people in New Jersey. And we were a successful company that had been in business for like 8 years. These were real clients. My contract was with Discovery, and I spent a fortune to make sure that they couldn't screw with the weddings. They couldn't do this. They couldn't do that. They could not touch anything that would impact the longevity of my company. And so that made it, from day one, a head-bumping situation with the executive producer. Because, my God, she made her name with this awful, what is the show called? Bad Girls Club. Have you ever seen it?
No.
This producer, it was the first show she ever made. And it was like a reality show where you put a bunch of girls in a house and see who comes out alive. And from there, she went to Jersey Shore, and that was an upgrade. And if you've ever seen, I know you know Jersey Shore.
Yeah.
Okay. I had Snooki's producer. Anyway, as my husband said, when they first got there, they tried to treat us like 7 unemployed people that were drunks, like they had just been working with for 5 years. And instead, they found like everybody, we hired all the off-duty cops to work our setups and teardowns, and they loved it. And here we are in Puerto Rico, and I've got the producer going, can they take their guns off? Why do we hire off-duty cops? More firepower. It's Puerto Rico. We had 12 murderers on our little island, actually in 2012. Not normal people. It's drug cartels. Vieques is the largest entry point to the United States for illegal drugs. because once it's on Vieques, it's in Puerto Rico. And there's no customs. And we don't have any marine patrol around the island. So we did one season of the show, went back to normal wedding planning, whatever normal wedding planning is. And not long after Hurricane Maria hit, a few years later, we took September's off. When we got big enough to pick and choose a little bit, we took September's off. It's our anniversary. And it's awful watching the weather with brides. If they have a September wedding, they just call you constantly. The radar moved left. The radar moved right. There will be a storm. Hurricane season, bad for brides' mental health. So we were up in DC and first Hurricane Irma hit. And we talked to a couple of our friends after that. The island hadn't gotten power back. And 1 week later, Hurricane Maria wiped that island out. And our house was fine. It was concrete. Didn't even leak. But the island didn't get power back for 17 months.
Wow.
Water was sketchy for a couple years. When we went back to meet the movers, something crazy like 12 or 14 months after the storm, our house had been looted twice. It was horrible. By the time we went back after the storm to meet the movers, they were still not on power. We were still on generators while we packed. And we just sold and packed and got out of there. And we were really blessed because we had a condo back in DC that we had kept because we had all these grandchildren. And if you want them to love you, you can't be their house guest. So we love everybody, but we don't want to stay with anybody for a week at a shot. So that's why we kept a place up there. Also, we kept all our doctor's appointments up there because we didn't want to die really young. And so we would go home and use that like as a base of operations, but we never planned to live there. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. We never planned to live there. It was our pop in and out place. Good thing I didn't try to restart the wedding company. I cried with every bride. I had to cancel 2 years of weddings. And then if I had started the wedding company again, I would have been nailed by the pandemic. Because by about the time I would have been grinding, gearing up for weddings, whether I'd gone back to Vieques or whether I'd done it in DC, was about the time that they started shutting the world down. And all I can say is I'm the luckiest person in the world because I said to my husband, I wrote the whole time I was down there, just like I wrote in PR. I wrote columns for Brides, The Huffington Post, Wedding Wire. I was a prolific columnist. I had a podcast called Wedding Reality Check with Sandy Malone for like 4 years before podcasts were cool. And I did all this stuff. And when I came back, I was like, I think I better go back to writing. And again, God shuts a door and opens a window sometimes. And in this case, an ad for the editor of Blue Lives Matter. It's the largest police publication in the world. And I'm like, I read it every day. They need an editor. They have a lot of typos. And it turned out that the publication started out more as a grump and complain location Facebook group for cops. And it started up when we had the whole Ferguson, Michael Brown, U.S. hands up, don't shoot, right? We all now know that didn't actually happen. But at the time, the whole world was burning. Yeah, as the next summer was the Freddie Gray riots in Baltimore, where the guy had been being transported. They hadn't put him in the van properly. And so he broke his back and died in this police transport van. And there were riots that were so out of control in the Baltimore area that we watched on live television as bad guys cut the fire hose on firemen who were trying to put out a fire in a brand new CVS drugstore. And so it was a crazy time to be editor of a police publication. But I had my cop Wikipedia on the couch. Because I could be like watching a video. I'd be like, Bill, come down here. That's not automatic gunfire. Is that 2-round burst? What am I hearing? And my husband was a firearms instructor for many years. So it made my job a lot easier. But I'd also been a police beat reporter in college. And I'd been married to a cop. Heck, our house got shot at once in DC when drug dealers decided they didn't like my husband's police car scaring away the neighborhood traffic for it. DC is really hard because you've got like gorgeous multi-million-dollar homes next to houses that are still occupied by grandma and the grandchildren that are taken over and are now running things. So the 80s, we lost a whole generation in DC to heroin and crack. There was anyways, what's DC's like? It's like every other house. And we got shot at They came and opened fire on our house while my husband was at work and I was home alone. Not fair. So, I've done all that. I've lived it. I've written it. And it was cool to become editor of that publication. I had reporters all over. I had in Michigan. I had a girl in Montana. I met Holly from Montana. I met in Jekyll Island, where I live now, because we met here for vacation years ago. And we came to meet in person after working together for years. And it was really great. But we ended up switching the name of it because after George Floyd, you couldn't put the words blue in anything on the internet without the algorithms going, no, bad. So we changed the publication name to the Police Tribune. And that was good because we had shifted from being a gossip rag to being a legit newspaper. And we were moved to Jekyll Island, the parent company, which was a t-shirt company that was started to fund the police publication originally. The t-shirt company got sold. And they didn't have the new owners had no interest in law enforcement. And so as they were making the decision to close down that publication, and we sold all the list, so to speak, over to Law Enforcement Today, which is another amazing publication that needs better editors. And I say that because Kyle Reyes, who runs it's amazing, and he's a good friend of mine. But I just pick on him. He can't afford me, or I'd work for him. But it was finally time to say, what am I going to do? I have wanted to write for fun my whole life. I wrote a DIY wedding planning book called How to Plan Your Own Destination Wedding, blah, blah, blah. But it came out right after the TV show. It did fine. I still get checks. I get royalty checks a couple times a year. It's enough for a Starbucks each time. But, right. But it's also a DIY wedding book that came out in 2012 or 13, right before all the apps for wedding planning came out. So it's a fun read and what have you, but you don't need it for your planning. So I shouldn't say that. But anyway, then after I wrote that, I started getting approached by other publishing houses and reality stars who wanted me to ghostwrite their books. So while I was wedding planning this last couple of years, I was also ghostwriting. I can talk about a couple of them. I wrote the marriage boot camp book for the creators, Jim and Elizabeth Carroll. And then I wrote a book for a Real Housewife. So I know I got to write really cool. And the more hidden your name is and the more secret it is, the more they pay you. So, right? Yeah.
You just want the credit, right?
They just want the credit and I just want the money. So, but I've always wanted to write. I mean, Mrs. Fitzpatrick in 6th grade brought in a picture book and said, look at a picture and then write a story about it. And I thought it was the best assignment of my whole life. My friend Kathy still swears it was the worst assignment she's ever had. Tells you how we're different. She went to work for the Federal Reserve. She's a math person. But I always wanted to write. And we were moving to Jekyll. We moved down here specifically because my mom had Alzheimer's. And she was deteriorating. And we needed to be closer by. And then my stepdad died. My mom came to live nearby us. But we came down here and it was like, this is a real life moment. Do I want to keep writing what I'm getting paid to write? Or do I want to write what I want to write and try and get somebody to buy it? And I wrote 2 books. I cranked them out in a month. And I was so excited. I have an agent because I've done enough books, right? And so I hadn't told my agent because I don't care. I've written everything on the planet. I'm not afraid to write, but fiction is different. When I had to deliver my first book to a shop, I swear to God, it felt like I was stark and naked. My husband thought I'd lost my mind. He came to help me bring the books of boxes into the Mosaic Museum, which is a museum here on our island. I mean, the first one's called Escape to Jekyll Island. And my husband, what's wrong? I'm sitting there crying. I can't get out of the car. I'm terrified. And he's going, you have stood in Congress and yelled at people. You have flown into live fire zones and had arguments with Jesse Jackson's staff. He's like, what the heck are you afraid of this for? This is the dumbest thing ever. I said, you have no idea. Every news article I ever wrote, if you had an interview with me and you said, Sandy, I saw you wrote this, but that's not what really happened. That cop didn't really do that. I'd be able to be like, let me show you 4 places it was reported and the original incident report. Body cam will be here tomorrow, right? Now, when I write, it's truly fiction and it's from the heart. Now, my first series, oh my God, if you need a laugh, if you have a friend who is getting married, has a daughter getting married, just has bridezillas in their universe, Okay. I took all the crazy things my clients did and I fictionalized them to protect the guilty. But when you read it's a 5-book series: Escape to Jekyll Island, In Bloom on Jekyll, Treasure on Jekyll, In the Shadows on Jekyll, and then Christmas on Jekyll. It is every book, there's romance, but every book is also rom-com because you can't make up the things my clients do. I mean, One Bride was so awful, she's 4 different characters in the book or she wouldn't be believable.
So this is a fine line also to nonfiction, right?
No, it's fiction. It is fiction. The main character's name is Tally Davis, and she's 29. I am not. She's 29, and she lost her job in Vieques because of a hurricane. So she moved back to Jekyll Island, Georgia, where she grew up. I did not. And started thought she was going to sit on her aunt's couch and eat ice cream for the summer and wine. And her aunt's like, get off your butt. There's no wedding planner here. Go start a company. And she does. She reconnects with childhood friends that she hasn't seen in a long time, starts building a network, reconnects with her next door neighbor, who is now a grown-up, smoking hot state trooper. And things are going really well. She picks up like a couple notable local clients, and it's a destination thing. So a local client in this environment, that's like an endorsement. It's good. Everything's going great. And then things start going sideways. No florist will book her weddings. She's gone to Savannah. She's gone to Jacksonville. She can't figure out what's going on. Things are going sideways. She can do flowers because she worked for a wedding planner in Vieques, an imaginary one, who had taught her. So she could do the flowers. She ended up ordering them in. She saved the day. It all turned out right. But Mitch, who was that boy that grew up to be a state trooper, he helped track down what it was, and it all tracked back to an old grudge from 10 years earlier that she had no idea. There really was somebody sabotaging her weddings. So that's book 1. I'm going to spoiler alert and tell you she survives the first one because there's 5 books. But it's cool because it's mystery and suspense. And book 3 won an International Impact Book Award in 2025 for women's fiction, mystery, and suspense. That's Treasure on Jekyll. Every one of them has mystery, and 3 and 4 get kind of dark. 5's not as dark because I couldn't get that dark on Christmas and Jekyll. Would just be wrong. But 3 and 4 are kind. What?
Define, book 4 and 5, dark. Define dark.
Book 1, the big crime that takes place is stealing flowers. Okay? Book 2, some of the stories are half true, half not. Book 2, the bad guy, so to speak, is a woman named Brenda, who was the main character Tally's client back in Puerto Rico. And she was a crazy client who broke up with her fiance, but kept the contract and the lease on the wedding villa because she was going to find another man. And she did. That one ended too. Anyway, that really happened until when she wanted to come back with a third guy and had to explain to her it was a legal contract with the name of the first groom on it. And we weren't going to do that. And she was so aggressive. I said, why don't you just go become a wedding planner? Like, if you really want to plan a party and you're not engaged, go become an event planner. Anyway, in my book, this did not happen. In my book, I had Brenda come back. He shows up at Tally's new business on Jekyll Island. Is like, you said I should be a wedding planner? Hire me. And Tally's like, yeah, no. But this crazy woman isn't going to just be foiled. And it is hysterical. And so anyway, but the crime in that is that this woman tries to take down the business. I'm not going to give it away, okay? But she gets caught. But in 3, we get into... 3 and 4 get into drugs and human trafficking, which is actually a real issue in coastal towns. And we are right next to the Port of Brunswick, which is one of the biggest ports in the United States. And it might be the biggest vehicle port in the country. And so it is really actually a problem here. But I didn't write it based on what happens here. I had covered so much trafficking in other ports for the newspaper that I went ahead. I used my experience from that and created a similar scenario that happened nearby. So, book 3 ramps up to it. And then book 4 is a totally different nefarious scenario, but gets really, really ugly. And it's kind of wild, but do you know who Ahmaud Arbery is? Have you ever heard the name? Okay.
No.
He was, golly, I'm going to get the age wrong, sounds stupid, but say a 26-year-old black man who lived in Brunswick, Georgia. It's our town right over the causeway here. It's before I lived here, but I covered it for a year and a half, so I feel like I know the guy. he had been spotted jogging in this neighborhood that didn't really make sense to jog in location-wise, a few times, and he had going into houses that were under construction, like looking around. But the videos didn't show he'd stolen anything, wasn't an issue. And 2 overly aggressive neighbors saw him running one day and went after him. And I was one of the first reporters in the country to see the video, and I'm telling you, it was a 1950s KKK movie. It was horrible. These 2 men jumped in the back, like one jumped in the back of a pickup truck while his dad drove, and another friend followed, filming. And they chased this guy while he was running all through the neighborhood, and then they caught him and they shot him. And it was a intense case because they didn't even arrest him for it that night. In fact, at the end of the day, the district attorney who told the cops not to arrest, she's been charged. It was a big, ugly mess. I looked at my husband and said, I'm not sure about moving down there after I'd reported on it. And yeah, we're on Jekyll Island. That's a little different. We have a gate, but it's not just a gate. You got to pay $10 to get on our island because it's a state park unless you have a pass. So we have cameras and a gate, and you got to pay $10. So it's pretty safe over there. But, holy moly. Anyway, I found a way to write Ahmaud Arbery into book 4 because Satilla Shores and the street he was shot on are almost a visual glance from our causeway where it happened. And I'd already reported on it, unrelated to anything, but I do a really good job explaining it. So anytime I can take something that I'm an expert on and do something with it, I get such a crazy kick out of it. And then book 5 is an art heist involving a very famous artist, real art. And he is dead, but he's my friend's dad. She got so excited about the book, she gave me some of his art that's never been offered for sale. And we are going to be auctioning it off at some different charity events to help fund kids' art camp summer stuff and things like that. So that came from book 5, The Christmas on Jekyll. But it's not as dark because we have Holly Jolly Jekyll every year. We have like something crazy like 12 million lights. They make the gate fee $15. Constant like flow of people through our lights for 6 weeks. It's a nightmare. Do not wait to have to go to the bathroom on your way home because you will get stuck in the Holly Jolly Jekyll traffic. And then you have to sing the 12 days of Christmas while you're driving down Stable Road. Because if you drive exactly the right speed, the lights pop up in tune with the song and you can sing the 12 days of Christmas. And if you're caught in that traffic, you might not want to sing the 12 days of Christmas, but everybody in front of you and behind you that paid $15, they're going to do their 20 miles an hour. So anyway, I love being here. I love writing about it. And my next series is a bit of a crossover. I'm not taking the whole series over, but the next series is called Under the Oaks, and it takes place next door on St. Simon's Island. And one of everybody's favorite characters, Kayla, she's moving over. She's opening the business for Callie. And so those books are late. I'd hope to have the first one out by August. Might still happen. But I have a grandson that's getting married in 2 weeks, and I've done a lot of book stuff this summer. I'm a little behind on that. But I do have, so that series will come out. It'll be a crossover. And then I have another new book that is coming out this fall that is totally different. It's called Thicker Than Blood. It is about It's about a patriarchal society, snooty family, where money and influence are so much more important than love, blood, family, any of those things. And the story, it's fiction. The story, not my family. The story it takes place up in the DC area, but up in Frederick, Maryland, one of the areas that I grew up in. And it's about, and then it eventually comes down to this region, but the story is about this patriarchal family, and it's told through the eyes of 3 generations of women in the family. And the first 2 generations of women actually succumbed to Alzheimer's, which is where it's not fiction in that I lost my mom in November. And timing wise for me, it was cathartic to write it, But I think a lot of us, when we hit our 50s, we're parenting our parents now, the adulting. Like, it's really hard to talk about some things medically and otherwise with your parent. And then in the case of my mom, she had Alzheimer's, right? But she was in great health, fantastic health. I was out at Author Nation. I get a phone call. She has a seizure. She's on the way to the hospital. I had a friend run and meet her at the ER. She's in Georgia. I'm in Las Vegas. And it was during when the U.S. was playing with its budget and our air traffic controllers were mad. So all the flights were screwed up. So we had to get in the car and drive 35 hours straight back. And we did.
Sure.
Only time I've ever abused Adderall. And we drove straight back, and it turned out my mom's brain was filled with tumors. And she died a week later. But she wasn't in any pain until a couple of days before she died. And they told her she had the tumors. But 10 minutes later, she didn't know. So every doctor that came in and every friend, she wasn't in pain. How are you today, Robin? Oh, magnificent. And then the last couple of days where she was really in pain, I'd be like, Mom, you have to tell them you hurt. They're not just going to give me the meds for you. You know, you got to say it hurts. And then she went into hospice and she died a few days later. It was really a fast, unexpected experience for me. My grandma had Alzheimer's and she lived to 95. And I think I thought my mom might outlive me. My mom was a challenge. I mean, all the respect in the world. She was amazing. But if I didn't have my husband, I'd have lost my mind. Because he went with her to get her hair done every 3 weeks. Because she'd have her color touched and her blowout. You know, every 2 to 3 weeks, they would both go get haircuts. And then he'd take her to lunch. He took her to lots of doctor's appointments for me. Anything that wasn't girly. You know, because when she died, she straight with me, your husband is my favorite human. I'm not hurt. That's the biggest compliment that she loved him that much. That is amazing. And my husband's been married before, so he liked to tell her, you're the best mother-in-law I ever had. And when she was dying, and I wasn't expecting it at all, you know, she hadn't been sick. This went, you know, they say, make sure you say all the things you want to say. How do you do that when the person doesn't know they're dying?
Yeah.
Because I couldn't be like, Mom, hey, there's some stuff I really want to tell you. I'm really sorry I was such a complete jackass. I don't know, for half of my 20s. And I'm sorry that I didn't listen when you talked about this. You know, all these just real things. And Mom, I want to know this. And you can't ask. Because I was afraid that if she realized, it would make her scared. And she wasn't scared. So I couldn't say goodbye to her. And that was really hard. But she died quickly. And that's a blessing too. And in the book, I wrote about what it's like to go through that part of the process. And I didn't mean to get weepy. It's hard. I'm trying to learn to not cry when I talk about it. It's hard.
Fine.
But
Fine.
I think that, okay, you're a guy. So I don't know if you ever read V.C. Andrews or the Flowers in the Attic series. But for your audience, think Flowers in the Attic. The first book, if you're Gen X, is the one that you read when you were in grade school, when you were reading it going, do they know I'm reading this? Am I old enough for this? It was such a dark series. And if you only saw the movie, read the book, okay? Because the movie and the book, not, okay? But the book has this big, dark mansion on the cover. And you'd open it, and there's a little woman, flower, you know, with her flower through the attic window. And this new book series is really along that track. It is fiction, okay? Not my family I'm writing about. This is the experience of the going through the Alzheimer's and different things. And, but it does set me up for, I've got a bunch of really dark family series stuff I want to write. All fiction, right?
All fiction.
Well, I come from a really prominent family. And it's not prominent like, we're not Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, right? But my family founded a large chunk of the Washington, D.C. area. And a lot of the roads are named after us and stuff like that. But you ready for our ultimate claim to fame? Even South African history will understand this. Ready? When John Wilkes Booth shot Abraham Lincoln in Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C., he stole a horse from my family's livery stable to ride to Dr. Mudd's house.
Whoa.
Exactly. Well, we have been around a while. You know, we are. When your mother hands you boxes of your Daughters of the American Revolution paperwork next to the file box of colonial dames, I'm going to tell you, she handed me a box, told me we were Daughters of the Confederacy. I was like, are you trying to get me shot? What are you doing, Mom? Nobody should be. I mean, I'm not judging. Oh, you do great work with charity. No, Cop wife don't need to be a daughter of the Confederacy. I can read the news article now. No, thank you. So, but I grew up that way. And I truly love being down here in Georgia where there is, before my book, some relative anonymity. But I think that I've got a lot of ideas. They're not all like my family's stories, but I've got a really cool perspective from growing up in that world. And I've got more deep, dark. The dark is in Flowers in the Attic. It was dark in general, but it was incest. There's no incest in mine. I can't write sex. But there's I think it's dark, but also humorous, and I don't know. I don't know how dark it is. It was my first standalone novel like that. So I'm totally my readers, and I got to record it like in a couple weeks. And I'm like, oh my God, can I do this? Like, because when I start writing these books, well, I open the book in my head, I hear dun dun dun. But we'll have to see.
Yeah. It's like all your books, right? From the first one to the ones that you've done now recently to the ones to come, all has components of your life.
Yes.
Like, have you ever considered writing a straight nonfiction book about Sandy Malone?
I think I haven't behaved well enough.
But maybe that's what people want to read about as well.
Yeah, I mean, my mom's gone. At least the one person who really never wanted
There's
to
a
read
lot of
all that.
fiction that's coming out, So
Yeah, no, it's interesting that you say that because we've been approached to do reality TV again, and we kind of laugh about it. My husband wants to plan weddings again. Have you lost your mind? He's like, well, it would be easy here because there's a lighting company and a linen company, and all you got to do is plan the weddings. This is the man who never had to talk to the bride and groom until they arrived on the island with their guests. I still have to talk to the brides. I still got to deal with the crazy for a year. No, thank you. But yeah, it's been such an
question mark for now.
Yeah.
Question mark for now.
Yeah, how about too soon with my mom's death? Is that fair? Too soon to make a decision.
Yeah. That's fair.
But my life is not so interesting, Kino. And I think maybe a lot of people who worked in media, and maybe you can identify with this, maybe we are interesting to other people, but my life has been so rich and interesting because of the people that are in it. Because I got to work with all these amazing brides. Some of them were from hell, but a lot of them were really great. I got to run a business in Puerto Rico. I had a nonprofit in Puerto Rico that supported law enforcement. I just got granted a 501c3 here on Jekyll Island because we're going to do fundraising events for people that need it. And you do all those things. I think my life is richer because of these people that I've gotten to work with and do stuff. So if I wrote a book, I think it would be more about all the amazing people that I've gotten to know. If you want to pick up from there.
Yeah, maybe that's a good point, because if you look at the amount of people out there in the world in their 60s and 70s that are remarrying in this day and age, it's a high number. And maybe it's that nostalgic moment that he's going through thinking, wow, we had such amazing times and weddings were so cool. And honestly, weddings are quite cool, So
they're amazing. It was so much fun. The first 5 years was an adventure.
Yeah.
The second 5 years with the TV show and everything, it was weird. It was like drunk guests in the Caribbean are awful because they're on vacation and they don't hold themselves accountable. And they drink all day on the beach and they don't tend to drink as much water as they should. So they get dehydrated and they continue to drink alcohol and they just act like buffoons at the weddings. And it's a lot. You know what I mean? Like, it's a lot dealing with all of that stuff. And I don't know how much of it would be better being back here stateside. But I mean, I loved my brides. I loved every single one of them. I cried with them when their weddings had to be canceled. I might try it again, but it really makes me laugh that it's my husband who wants to try it again. Like, I want to write books about silly things because you can't make up what these couples do. I mean, okay, people are always asking me, is this true? Did this happen? And a favorite one is, did you really have a miniature dachshund best man swallow the wedding rings? No, it was a Rottweiler, and it was the engagement ring. And we have an X-ray to prove it. And it later went on a TV show called Your Dog Ate What? So we know that it was real. But I didn't use those names. And in my book, it's a miniature dachshund wearing a seersucker suit, who's the best man. His name is Ralph. And, that it's fiction. But the real life part of it, maybe down the road. Right now, I think that writing fiction is what I've always wanted to do. And right now, I've got more ideas than I do time to write. And this nonsense, I was telling you, when I went to my agent and said I wrote these books, she said, I don't do fiction. I said, what? I didn't know agents either did fiction or nonfiction, but I'd only done nonfiction, so it hadn't come up. And I mean, she's a real agent. And I'm like, hey, will you get me a fiction agent? She said, yeah, if you want. But you said you wrote 2 books and you have a 3rd one almost done. I said, yeah. She said, Sandy, do you remember all the books you wrote? Do you remember the timeline with a traditional publisher in New York? She said, I don't think you're going to be happy. She's like, I'm going to point out some clients of mine who, when they went fiction, they self-published. I think you're going to want to do it because you can put out as many books as you want. And she was right. I'm not saying that, the day that Penguin or Random House realizes they've missed me and they show up wanting to republish all of my books, I'm not saying I won't thank them, praise them, and say, please, please, please. But for now, I can write as much as I want. I can write on any topic I want. If people are like, oh, you write romance, you can't write dark this. Heck no, I can write anything I want. Nobody's paying me ahead and telling me what I have to write this time. And it is so darned exciting. So, and Wedding Island, for your audience, it still streams free on, do you guys have Tubi? And we have Tubi, and it's on, I think it's on Amazon Prime. I don't know if it's free. It's on all of the Discovery Channel apps because it was a TLC show called Wedding Island. Wedding Island on TLC.
I think I've seen something.
I think you might. It was.
I have seen something else. Maybe I never go deep into it, but Wedding Island is sounding really familiar to me right now.
This is a funny one that I don't usually say, but this is an international interview, so you might think it's interesting. I was in the top 10 Fox International summer TV shows for 2 years with one season.
Nah.
They did all these ads with me and Gordon Ramsay on them. It was hilarious. But the show was actually, I don't know if it was more popular internationally or it just had more spread internationally. But it's a hoot because they still do days where they just marathon it. You know how they do that and show a whole series? And I won't know until somebody calls me or my social media goes nuts with random people messaging me. But, I got a picture from a friend who's like, I went to Daytona to get away from you and you're on my TV screen. And all I can say is, I'm sorry.
Wow. Sandy, there's only been one other show as a podcaster that I just had to sit here and be so entertained.
Oh my goodness, what a compliment. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, wow, what a life. And I mean, you still live in a life and you still are going to do so much more. With all the books that you said is still on the way. And there's probably going to be more in between, as the years, unfold. But wow.
It's fun because you know how you said there's things about me that people don't know and that I could do, do nonfiction. Because I'm like, I got my pilot's license when I was 18. And I don't think that's super exciting because my whole family's in aviation. I actually don't fly pilot in command. I haven't in many, many years. I am not current to fly. I'm not currently a licensed pilot. Nothing. But I grew up in an aviation family. My dad founded the National Association of Flight Instructors. We had 3 airplanes. I thought everybody did. I'd never been on a commercial flight till I got to high school. And I think some of that stuff would be fun to write about because I've never found a way to write it into my fiction books. So you inspire me, sir. I'll have to think about it.
I'm glad. So 2 questions before we conclude is, what are your due dates for the next series that's on the way? And where can listeners find you online?
Okay. So at sandymalone.com, you can order my books. But to be honest, for international, go to Amazon. Be cheaper for you.
Yeah.
Also bookshop.org. It depends on where you are and what you're doing. But because it's always cheaper for you to get it through one of them internationally. Barnes & Noble has my books. All the major ones do. I'm trying to get them into all the the stores, and the independent stores. It's tough, but I'm excited about it. And my new books, okay, the Under the Oak series, I would be lying if I said I have any idea. Goal is August. But I have a new cover designer and we're playing. So maybe, but I'm behind on that. It's hard to re-edit your mother's death. It takes, mental breaks there. And the Thicker Than Blood will be out. To quote my publicist, dark family novels do well in the fall. I hate the holiday season. That makes sense. So I guess we're probably looking at late October, November. I'm kind of hoping it's October because I'll be at Author Nation and then I'm going on a cruise in November. So I'm thinking it'd be easier for the come out. We're shooting for October, okay? But I'm so very excited. I have so many books in me to write, and I love doing it, and I have so much fun with it. And there's an email for me on my website because I love to hear from readers. I love to hear what people think. I like feedback. I don't even care when they're yelling at me for using a bad word. If you read my book, thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, August is 1 month away. October is literally around the corner.
Yeah.
Before you know it, it's going to be out.
Thicker Than Blood just went to proofread. So technically, it's probably about 6 weeks behind schedule, but it's not that bad. I mean, it's all relative. And for a rollout this fall, all my other books, I didn't tell anybody they were coming out till the boxes arrived because I was too nervous. I had to see it. I needed to see what it was. I've never before handed out review copies to the media. Dear freaking God, they're going to have to put me in the funny farm. Dog is going to need to move over in his cage. Because that's scary to be like, okay, it's dropping on a certain date. So the answer is I don't know, but not for lack of trying to figure it out. And I have a lot more books coming out. So I hope people will explore my books because they're not just about weddings and they're not like straight romance. There's a lot of mystery and suspense. If you are a cop or law enforcement family, these books are not just for girls. You would get a kick out of them reading it from the cop wife perspective. And I think that it's something that a lot of the audience can enjoy. So, and your readers, please, the whole world enjoys laughing at the U.S. and our law enforcement. I mean, and I respect law enforcement completely, but we have some ridiculous things happen here. And your audience will just be like, Americans.
Or there is going to be someone out in Spain that will send you an email not related to the book, but be like, Sandy, can you please plan my wedding? I want it to be in Jamaica.
I still get those requests. No, I still get. It's so funny. It's not as bad as it was. Okay, because I took the website down. I mean, I did everything, and I changed all the social media to reflect when the hurricane hit. Like we don't know when we'll reopen, and we're not reopening. But that doesn't stop people if they track my phone number down. It's not that hard, and they call. Like, I'm just wondering if you could plan my wedding in Vieques. No, I'm in Georgia. Oh, my favorite one. We've lost our marriage license. Can you go get us another copy? No. But I tell my girlfriend, yeah, if it's not a bride we remember and really like, charge them like $200 and just go do it for them. I mean, it's like a $15 process, but in Puerto Rico, everything takes 5 hours. So,
well, Sandy, if I decide to get married in the future to come, you would be obligated to at least do it for me. Right.
If you want to come get married on Jekyll Island, Kino, I will gladly plan it for you. And you know what? Jekyll is famous. You might see us in a future season of The Gilded Age. I don't know if you've watched that. But this island started out as a playground for the millionaires. The Astors, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, Goodyears, I'm forgetting so many names, but which people, right? They built a hunting lodge here in the early 1800s. And they would come down on their boats and come after the holidays and spend the winter here because they called it a year-round resort. The weather was so beautiful. I beg to differ, but I mean, it's not quite year-round. But so they built this beautiful historic hotel, like blow your mind beautiful. And then they started building their own private villas because as more people joined their Jekyll Club, it was getting crowded and they didn't want to hang out with the hoi polloi in the living rooms and in front of the fireplace. So they built their own. We had Millionaires Row popped up. And it's so cool. These buildings, they don't have kitchens because they didn't eat in their houses. They went to the club to take their meals. They just have butler pantries. I mean, these are massive houses too. It's really neat. Anyway, it was straight out of like a TV show, like Gilded Age, the life these people were living. The Federal Reserve Act that created the U.S. banking system. The entire thing was written in the middle of the night at my club. We're members, and the hotel, the historic hotel, which is absolutely gorgeous. It's operated by Noble Resorts. It functions as a members country club for people who live on the island, as well as a hotel for people. So we have the Federal Reserve Room where it was signed. I had a book launch it, and Pulitzer had a house here. And okay, ready for this? The Carnegies bought the next island over because they were mad at the Pulitzers. True story. I think they made up later and they would vote over. But that's how Cumberland Island became the whole Carnegie Island, was because they were mad. And it's just so interesting. So when everything, World War II happened, and the U.S., we got into it because of Pearl Harbor, but the first attacks really on U.S. mainland, it was along the coast of Georgia. They were U-boats were shooting our merchant ships. And so we dug another waterway called the Intercoastal Waterway that runs from northeast United States down to Florida. So you can take a boat all the way from north to south without having to get on the ocean, because the U-boats were sinking all of our supplies. But at the time that was happening, the club members were here. 1/6 of the world's wealth was gathered on this island.
Wow.
And then the U-boats were blowing things up around it. And somebody went, that's not a good idea. We should evacuate. Please note that to go to the mainland, we didn't have a bridge or a causeway then. They had to take a boat or a ferry. So imagine what risk they were taking to do this. And so they evacuated them all in the middle of the night, and they couldn't even leave on their boats because of what was happening. The boats all stayed or got transported later. Most of them took the train out of Brunswick in the dark of night. And the military moved in. And there were a few caretakers that stayed on the island, but mostly military. St. Simon's was really military next door. And then when the war ended, the millionaires got ready to come back. And the governor of Georgia said, sorry, handed them a check for about $600,000 and said, the state has purchased your island under the eminent domain clause. We now own it. It is now a state park open to commoners.
Wow.
And it took many years. And eventually we got to build a bridge and a causeway. And but they only built 600 houses on the island. Only 1/3 of the island is developed. The rest of it can't be. It's a state park. And I'm one of the lucky people who lives here. But it is a state park, and anybody can come visit it and tour these things and see all this amazingness. And it really is just I'm missing on so many. There's not enough time in the day. You know, there's so many cool things here for people to come see and do. If somebody is going to Florida and they're into history, they're a history buff, or if you're going up to Savannah, we're between Jacksonville, Florida, and Savannah, Georgia. You literally have to pass our exit. Stop. Come check it out. Because you feel like you've walked back in time.
Yeah. Okay, I am definitely going to Google it and check out some pictures.
I have a guest house in the backyard, Kino. Just make your reservation in advance. You can come stay.
Thank you.
We can film a podcast on the beach.
Yeah, that'll be like so awesome, right? Yeah, but Sandy,
Don't knock it
thank
till you
you so
try it.
much. Once again, like mind blown.
Well,
You're
thank you for having me.
entertaining, the history, the stories, like wow, and I'm sure there's just so much more, to be like.
It's been amazing. And it was so much fun to talk to you. And it's so much fun to be international. But I will say, you do not need to be American to enjoy laughing. You just need to have been to sad weddings. Or if you've ever been a DJ or a hairdresser, or God forbid a caterer, those people should get medals. It's the kind of book. People say they laugh till they cry while they're reading it. And I love that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I will definitely share the link. And for international listeners, there is a Kindle version as well that's available.
Neat.
Is it? Okay. Thanks, Sandy.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have said this there. Just say if you can cut it in, if you can't, don't worry about it. All my books are on Kindle Unlimited. So if you're a Kindle subscriber, they're free.
Nice. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Okay, we can both take it. We can both take it as the best.
Kino, if you ever need somebody last minute, call Mickey. Because I've worked in so many different realms, I can usually talk about different topics. Somebody last minute.
Yeah. Okay. Definitely. I will definitely.
I'm a good sport that way, and I won't lose my link next time. I was a little slow logging in. Sorry about that.
No, it's cool. It's all cool. Okay. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you. Have a great day. And I will
you
promote the heck out of it after I get the notice. Do you know when this one's running?
Yeah. So with Mickey, his shows are released on a Monday or a Tuesday latest.
Okay. So meaning next Monday or just a Monday?
No, next Monday.
Okay. Dude,
it's always between the Monday and the Tuesday.
No,
so
he knows that. That's how I had a regular schedule when I had a podcast years ago. I didn't have guests. It was before, technically, that was a lot difficult then. But, this was the way early end of, anyway, I'm not good at it. But I'm good as a guest. I'm not great as a host. But I swear to God, the difference in how it all works now, it's amazing. It's magic.
And it can only get better. How we can work with it.
You were really fun.
Internationally.
I Googled you too. You're kind of all over there too. I was like, I screenshotted to a friend. I was like, look, I get to talk to a hottie South African guy tomorrow. I was like, this is one up. I don't want to say anything about like the average hair color of the interviews I do, but you're significantly younger. So.
Okay. I'll take that as a compliment.
Okay. I'm not being inappropriate. I'm just saying you're a lot younger than the average.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Sandy.
It was a pleasure to meet you. And if you get to Georgia, I really wasn't joking. We do have a mass. Here you go. You can have a laugh as I move the thing. Can you see the guest house in the backyard?
Yep.
Watch the backyard.
Wow. I love the color. I love the
Okay, yeah. We just finished renovations inside the house, which is why I kept moving the computer like this because have you ever changed carpet or do you know what a popcorn ceiling is?
No, I've not, but I have changed carpets.
Okay. Have you ever seen like a textured ceiling? It was a thing in like the 70s. They're hideous, right? We ripped them all out because they're gross, but they make such a mess. So to do carpet and that, everything had to come out of the 3 bedrooms, right? It's all in my game room. Isn't that awful? Yeah, I know. We just finished the renovations and my husband and I yesterday his new gun safe arrived. And now things can start moving back in. So.
Okay.
Are you on social media if I tag you with when I post it and stuff? Is that good?
Yeah. Yes, I will find you as well on social
media. You find me, Kino.
So, I'll find you. So what I always do anyway, So it's either you're going to find me or I'm going to find you and it will just follow you and tagging each other.
My husband is in law enforcement. We can find you. That's not really true. I probably have more law enforcement connects than him now, but don't tell him I said that. Anyway, have a fantastic
it's
day.
It's part when he listens to this interview. He'll be like, oh, is that what she said? Okay.
Well, I said it at the end. We'll see if he hears it or not. All right. All right, darling. Take care.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate it. And we'll
appreciate you
in the future.
Yay. I look forward to seeing it. Bye.
All right. Bye.